Welcome to Speak Arizona, the ultimate podcast for professionals looking to elevate their speaking skills in the workplace, meetings, and beyond. Whether you're aiming to captivate an audience, lead a successful meeting, or enhance your professional presence, this podcast is your go-to resource for actionable tips, expert insights, and inspiring stories. Join us as we delve into the art of effective communication. Speak Arizona is powered by District 3 Toastmasters. Subscribe now and take the first step towards becoming the speaker you've always wanted to be.
Welcome to Speak Arizona, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to find your voice. My name is Sherban, and today I have a special episode with two world champions of public speaking. Two, not one. But as I did not do a good job introducing them live, I wanted to ensure that they get the proper introduction. So this is part 2 of the interview. If you've ever studied the craft of public speaking, today's guests need no introduction. But I'll give one anyways. Darren LaCroix and Mark Brown aren't just world champions of public speaking, they're legends in the speaking world. Darren won the title in 2001 with a speech that turned failure into fuel. Mark claimed the crown in 1995, with a performance that blended storytelling with a heart like few others ever had. But the cool part about Darren and Mark is not winning the championship, but what they have done since then. And that is they've spent decades helping others find their voice. When they're not speaking on stages, they use their platform like Stage Time University, where they have mentored thousands of speakers, coaches, and leaders around the globe. Not just do a regular presentation or a speech, but bring excellence and create unforgettable presentation. I followed their work for years. For many years, as well as listen to their podcast where they share a lot of ideas and a lot of nuggets about communication and speaking. So, am I a fanboy? Yes, I am. So, with that, I no longer want you to wait. Here is the recording that me and Rupesh did with Darren LaCroix and Mark Brown. Enjoy. As you're coaching and you've spoken to corporations, you do Vegas events once or twice or 3 times a year. What do you see as the emerging thing that audiences walk away when you give them these tips? Like, what kind of transformation do you see from your audience?
Wow. How do I answer that modestly? I mentioned this to the audience in the Toastmasters last night. I've had the privilege, like Darren has, of traveling around the world giving presentations. One particular group that likes to hear from us as world champions is Toastmasters at the district level. And their districts internationally. I've been to district conferences in the USA with 80 people. We've been to Asia where there's 600 or more people at a district conference. I was in India recently in the month of May. We're recording this now in July, near the end of July. And 2 days ago, I saw a post on LinkedIn about a program I delivered in May. Now it's July. And the individual was listing all the lessons he learned from me 5 weeks or 6 weeks ago that are still right at the front of his mind, to the point where he chose to post about it on LinkedIn 2 months later. I say this not to brag, but Darren and I are committed to giving our clients, our audiences, the best that we can offer them so they can be better, be it in communication, be it as a leader, be it as a husband, a spouse, as a servant, as a human being. So when I say I see these posts as evidence, I used to work with kids a lot for many years, and I have had students and teachers write me 7 years later talking about the impact on their school. This may sound like a brag, but it comes as a result of the hard work we put in to make sure our message is clear, relevant, and helpful. Anyone can go on and begin to speak and sound eloquent. Forgive me, Shakespeare, but that often is words full of sound and fury signifying nothing. If I wanted to do that, I'd go into politics. Okay. But it's the work we put in to give our audiences and our clients value and applicable ideas that they can put into practice immediately. That comes with work.
Yeah. And thank you for bragging, because I do think that the value of being a skillful presenter and communicator is invaluable, and it can impact the lives of many.
Yeah, even Mark Twain had said, he sent a long letter to his friend. He said, "I'm sorry I didn't have enough time. If I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter." And that's what we're saying. One of the big mistakes that we talk about is too much blah, blah, blah. But they don't know what is blah, blah, blah and what is compelling. That's not what you do. That's not your life experience being a world-class coach.
Can you talk a little bit more? I love this concept that you mentioned in your mastery equation of a qualified coach. What are some of the characteristics to look for to find that qualified coach? How have you all developed yourselves? Say more. I just love that concept.
Thank you. And before Mark, I had never been coached before 2001. Before Mark, I looked around. I was like, okay, this coaching thing, my ego was finally like in check, at least at the beginning. And it's a little bit, but I thought, okay, who would I really trust? So it has to be somebody you would trust. So you have to like them, believe in them, because they're going to give you feedback you don't want to hear. They're going to not pat you on the head. So it needs to be someone you're open to. Even if it's a little uncomfortable, that's fine as long as you're open. And somebody who, let's just say, either does it for a living and has many clients, and you could go and do a little research. If they have a book, go read their book. Do you like their book? Does their writing resonate with you? If they have a course, take their course. Look at videos of theirs. Is that someone you trust? Now, we love Toastmasters, but there's a lot of well-meaning Toastmasters who aren't qualified. Now, they can give you feedback, but as we talked about last night, there's two kinds of feedback. Number one, here's what I thought and felt. Number two, here's how to make it better. And that's where you have to be careful, because when everyone's giving you feedback, a lot of their default is, here's what I would do if I was you. If you're a horrible speaker, I don't want that advice, because I don't care what you would do. And so there's some discernment involved. We've got to do our pre-work. We've got to do our discernment, our due diligence in order to see if you would be open to that one. So it's pretty easy. And then you can obviously ask around. If you are a Toastmaster, say, who are some of the best coaches in our district? And then go take them to coffee, buy them dinner, buy them lunch, and just don't commit yet, but ask them, get to know them, because you have to have a comfort level, because this person's going to tell you things you don't want to hear. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's not just someone's a coach. There's a lot of people who go get a coaching certificate and they're still horrible, but a little effort on your part. And I also have a team of coaches. In Stage Time University, we have 8 coaches, and they all have different skill sets. Mark is better with the script. Jennifer Leone, she's from Australia. She goes into your soul and pulls it out and holds it up, like right in front of you. And we created Stage Time University tissues. And we call that the tissue call, because people are like, oh, that's my father. But I sat at her kitchen table with her, and she asked me about a story. And like within 5 minutes, I was crying. And I was like, oh, but this is what I do for a living. But she has that discernment. She has that skill. So again, it's not just a coach, but it's the coach that you need the help with. So that's why when we work with YPO, it starts with Mark. I'm involved, but I let him do more of the talking at the beginning and him do the macheteing. And then I became Dialogue Darren, is what they call me. How do we turn it into dialogue? How do we tighten the dialogue? Because I learned that's part of my skill set, part of what I love, part of my passion, and then using the stage to move with the emotions strategically. One of the coaching checklists we have is move with purpose. You see a lot of people just go back and forth. They stop in the middle, they go to the right, they go to the left, but there's no real rhyme or reason, even in the world championship level, because no one's told them, or they didn't seek that advice. So if you go to getaspeakingcoach.com, you see a list of all of our coaches, And you'll see each of them list their skill sets or what their strengths are. Michael Davis, his TEDx is his thing. That's what he focuses on. And storytelling. Chris McGuire, storytelling and humor. He was my first comedy mentor. He's been the head writer for a lot of late night comedy roasts. He was Arsenio Hall's head writer for 158 shows. Even though humor is my thing, I would hand you to him. Why? Because he's got a better perspective. So it's also finding the skill set of what you need to help with as well.
Just one more critical piece. Are you and that coach a good fit? And there have been individuals who have come to me who I know I can help, but I could tell right away, I'm not the one for that person. And you have to make sure you're a good fit, which is why I would second Darren's suggestion. Have coffee with them, have lunch with them, have a conversation.
See if there's a connection.
Even if it means going on a Zoom call or a Teams call or a Google call, whatever, but have a conversation first before you decide to commit, because that's going to be important to understand you. And here's the key with when I say that. There are times you have coaches who will give you the best advice, great advice, but it would fit their own personal style. It's not the best advice for your style. So you have to make sure, are they a fit? Do I like each other? Do they understand? Do they get me? And can they help me to become the best that I can be, bring out the best in me? Thankfully, 24 years ago, Darren and I were a fit, and we've been together ever since.
Yeah, and he's the writer. That's his thing. But he got to know me and my style. I used the stage. I used my body. I fell on my face in the speech intentionally twice. Mark would never do that. That's not his style. But for me, I studied at the beginning of my comedy career, I studied Robin Williams, and he resonates with me. So I'm playful. I use the stage, but strategically. The other thing I would say too is I respect every world champion there's ever been, but even myself, after I won, I didn't know how to coach. The year after I won, I didn't know how to coach. Now I've been doing it for 20 years. Now I'm really good at it. But the first year out, I was teaching fine, but coaching, I didn't have that ability other than regurgitating what I learned from him. So not every world champion is a great coach. And a lot of them will admit to that, but that's not their thing. They haven't chosen that the way we've chosen. This is our path. So again, not to diss them, it's just not their chosen field. So even world champions, we've seen some speakers who've gone to a world champion, and you can tell who coached them because their style came out in that person, even though it wasn't them.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and please, viewers, listeners, I pray you really get this. It's very common when someone wins a world championship, there's a new hero of the day, come to our district, come to give us a keynote. And to be very honest, there are world champions who win the trophy. That's all they got, a 7-minute speech. Then they're being asked to come to our district in 8 months and give us a 1-hour keynote. Oh, you won? Help me. I'm going to compete. Can you coach me? Please don't assume because somebody has won the world title, they're qualified to be a keynoter and a coach immediately. So the recommendation is, yes, you can look at world champions, but what have they done after the world championship? Give them some time to live that year out and to learn and grow as they do that. So be very careful who you ask, because someone has accomplished it in the moment does not mean they're experienced enough to then impart that knowledge, and they may not have the techniques a more seasoned champion has had. I'm not trying to take anybody's thunder or anybody's job from them. I'm simply advising you based upon 30 years of experience. That's all.
And if you look at my backstory, when I won, it was 2001. I joined Toastmasters in 1994. Okay, so for 7 years, I was working to become a professional speaker. So I taught a humor boot camp with one of my other comedy mentors. So I had been training already before I won. So I was qualified to do some teaching and training, not coaching, teaching and training when I won, because I already had the backstory. Some people don't have that backstory yet.
And I had David Brooks, the 1990 world champion, as my coach, the master mentor, David Brooks, Austin, Texas. And I got to work with Darren 6 years after I won. So I had 6 years of David's guidance along the way, my own failures, I worked with Morgan MacArthur, who won in 94. So over that 6-year period, I had developed the skills to help others. So when Darren came to me, I had 6 years in before I guess I had qualifications. So think about that as well.
Let me ask you, I was curious because
It's your show.
I'm going to ask you, you win the title in 95.
Yes.
Darren is 6 years later. You're
Yes.
coaching him.
Yeah.
Now he's world champion, but there's a lot of the things that you've already learned along the way while Darren became champion. Where exactly you decided that, you know what, even though I was your coach or your mentor, now we're partners? Like, what established that? Like, how did that partnership evolve and coagulate?
Before I answer the question, I want to share with you a statement that David Brooks made to me a year after I won the world championship. He said, I want you to surpass me. One of my coach's goals was to make me so good, I was better than him. To this day, I marvel. David Brooks, you are the master mentor. But what he was doing was preparing me to be as good as he was and maybe even better. And where I am now, I continue to say I owe it all to him because he got me started. And the decision for us to partner up really wasn't mine, it was Darren's. And the first time we worked together was at a small workshop in New England. I forget what year it was. My wife and daughter actually came. It was a one-day workshop at a little hotel. He drove down from Boston. I drove up from Mount Vernon, New York. I was the first full day I recall doing with him, but he invited me to work with him because he began to build his business on his own. And I'm not sure why he asked me, but here we are. 20+ years later, still doing it.
That was the accent. That was.
Do you remember what I don't recall
remember,
exactly.
but going back to my backstory, in 98, I started realizing in the speaking world that because I did stand up. Now, I wasn't a headliner. I wasn't great at it. But in the speaking world, the fact that I did stand up raised my own credibility. So now people would come to me, and my comedy mentor was also a speaker. His name was Fitzy. They came to us and started asking us questions about humor and comedy. And so we created the Humor Bootcamp in 98. So we took his nightlife course, so an adult education, how to write comedy course, and we turned it into a how to write humor, clean humor for professional presentations. So 1998, I was already training how to be funnier. So after 2001, now people started gravitating me. How do I be a better speaker? And honestly, it was one of my mentors, Rick Siegel, who kept pushing me. He said, you need to create a product, CDs and DVDs back then, you need to create a product on speaking. I was like, I don't want to be a presentation skills guy. I saw so many horrible ones in Toastmasters. I'm like, I don't want to be in that venue or that barrel, if you will. But so he kept relentlessly coming on and he's got to create a product. And because I always recorded myself, which I learned from the stand-up comedy world, I was like, I have versions of my speech along the way. I could probably put something together. And then I sat down with Dave, my other coach, and just did an interview about the process we went through. And I created a 4-CD set called Speak Like a Champion. So this was like a month after I won. And my first presentation was in Malaysia. I'd never been out of the country in my life. I didn't even know there was a country, Malaysia. And so on my own little laptop, I burned copies of the CD one at a time. I bought a shrink wrap machine and I packaged it, printed the labels right on my home computer, the Stomper, and shrink wrap it together. Now, I had a humor product already, learn how the pros make them laugh, because I interviewed my comedy mentors on how to be funnier. So I knew product. I was good at creating product and courses. So now I just put a different one together with a different title and about speaking. So I get to them. You remember Po Kim Shong?
Oh, yeah.
He was my handler when I got there in Malaysia, and he was a great salesman, great salesman. I brought as many as I could fit in my luggage, and I sold out before I even went on stage. And I was like, oh, people will pay for this. And so that's where I realized, because I won the world championship, that's what people wanted. I already had a background in training. Now I'm just using what I learned over 2 years of teaching this humor camp and doing it in another subject. And then when I had such wisdom working with Mark and learned so much from him, I was like, hey, I'm already doing training seminars. Let me just add a new one. And then the next one I did was with Craig Valentine, another champion that helped me. And we did one on the business of speaking because Mark was working for a company back then and going out and speaking around the world, but he wasn't marketing himself. So Craig and I put one together about how to be a paid speaker, how to get paid to speak. And so it just evolved. And then we're like, we could teach storytelling, we could teach this. So I already had the foundation. I built on it. I saw what people wanted and I pulled in the people that taught me. Long answer, but there you go. That's what you get for asking.
It's a cool history. It's because I was part of your Stage Time University and I saw some of the products. I don't know if some of them are old from back then.
Some of them were digitally transformed to online
Right.
courses
Yeah.
because it's still relevant.
Yeah. And there's a lot of value in Stage Time University.
StageTimeUniversity.com.
Yeah. I have more questions, but do you?
I was curious when we were talking about mentors or rather coaches, and just maybe a rapid fire question. What's some of the worst advice you've ever received from a public speaking coach or a speaking coach? And you're like, oh, that's where you came up with this term. I think is very deliberate of qualified coach.
When you say coaches, I would be more willing to say individuals who offer coaching, because the coach you choose is the coach you say, I want them to coach me. My coach appeared. I was the student and the teacher appeared, and what a teacher I had. Still to this day, I'm a master mentor. But there are always those who give you advice. From your Toastmasters Club, they've been around longer, they'll offer you advice. But I can't think immediately of bad advice that I got 30 years ago. So I'll let Darren go first.
There you go. I'm thinking a great example is when I joined the contest in 2001, because my mentor said, Darren, take the stories you have and make them so good, someone will pay to hear them. And I kept thinking I had to find the story. I had to find the story. Then once you found a story, that was it. I didn't know there was a process to improve it. So I joined the speech contest in order to work on a story I was telling my first time on stage from my keynotes. I pulled it out of my keynote. I worked on it, gave it an open close so it fit the 7-minute Toastmaster program, with the whole goal to put it back in the keynote. When I was getting feedback from people on the championship speech that I was working on, I follow my face. And when I would go and get 22 live clubs would give me feedback, they would say, you were down too long when you hit the ground. You were down too long. I was uncomfortable. You should get up sooner. You were down too long. I was uncomfortable. You should get up sooner. Okay. I had only competed once before in 98 in the humorous contest. So I had never been in the international speech contest until this year. Now I've been working on my career and skills. I haven't been in a contest. So the contest was new to me. And when I heard that feedback, I thought these people know more than me. They've been around longer than me. But when I brought that feedback to Mark, he said something that shocked me.
I said, stay down longer.
But everyone, Mark, is telling me get up sooner. Everyone. They said they're uncomfortable. I can't make the audience uncomfortable.
Yes, you can, because as a speaker, your job is not to make the audience comfortable. Indeed, when you make them uncomfortable, they'll assess their own life, their circumstance, situation, and then they'll make the changes that you recommend based upon the value you bring, the experience you have, and the wisdom you provide. I said, Darren, stay down longer. Let them feel that emotion. And worked out.
And so that's what I mean by a qualified coach. Everyone thinks they're qualified, and they were right about the first two. I was down too long. That's what they thought. I was uncomfortable. That's what they thought. They were right about that. So I used that to my point. And so after I fell and I stood up, I said to the audience, and by the way, you can check it out on YouTube. I said, did you feel I stayed down too long? And everybody laughed because I knew what they were thinking. So I needed that first bit, but I needed to follow his advice to stay down longer to make them uncomfortable. So I knew they would be thinking that. If I got up sooner, they wouldn't be thinking that, and that line wouldn't have worked. Yet that line was exactly where I connected with them.
And the punchline on the floor where you're like,
Mr. Toastmasters, that kills.
That's from the comedy world, my comedy experience, taking something that's done all the time repetitively and putting a twist on it. But here's the comedy key is I had to build up the tension with his advice. So when I was down there for so long, they're like, do something. So that was the release of tension. And I say comedy cuts down, humor lifts up. Comedy cuts down, there's a victim. So we don't do stand-up comedy, quote unquote, jokes in speeches where you're punching at someone, but we use levity to release the tension. So we build tension and then we release it. And so that's what that was an example of. I built up the tension and then released it by the boom. They didn't see that coming.
Okay. I have a question that's actually top of mind for me as a speaker. There's all these processes. You guys taught the valley and the then and then the after. The then now story map. There's so many, the Patricia flip, I use that in my keynotes and everything. The challenge is because I'm an engineer, I overthink things and I'm all about the process. And I'm like, move 2 steps to the left, do all of this. Yeah. So my challenge is that I have too many processes in my head. And now I'm more up here instead of being in my heart. How do you work on that?
I have a saying that says, if you're in your head, your emotions are dead. So it's very challenging to connect with an audience if you're thinking what you're going to say. So we say, don't memorize, internalize. Don't memorize, internalize. And one of the ways you do that is when you're rehearsing, Patricia Fripp says you need to rehearse with your body. And she actually does her rehearsing on a treadmill because you want to get it into your body. I want to take it one more is that to give you an example, you've seen my speech a few times, I'm sure. I was like, Mark, I can't memorize it. I can't memorize it. So what we did, it was in little sections. And so using the stage, I put down these yellow pieces of paper for each little section I used my church on a stage, and then I literally put the little vignettes in order because my metaphor is if we all know where we are and where we want to go. So I use the stage. Now the camera follows me, so you might not recognize it by watching it on video. But if you were there, I said, we all know where we are today and where we want to go. So I laid out this metaphor. And then I said, they're strangers who the New York Times, 238,799.5 miles. Strangers would tell you it won't work. Friends and family will tell you it won't work. And then I realized Subway, I never took the step after the ouch. And then the woman who I bombed where she covered my mouth. And then VNI, valuable negative information. So I'm literally telling each vignette. So the key was I would go through it in order, but then I would have my dad point at different places on the stage randomly. So what I was doing, it's an NLP technique called anchoring. So I knew far left, VNI, just next to that, the woman who covered my mouth. So the more I would do it, the more it would just become a part of me. In fact, we have a client in Australia who it was her first time to ever be on a big stage. And we call it stageology, and we call it a stage plan. I make a plan. Now they're telling one story, not a whole keynote, but I literally plot out each vignette, if you will, each segment of the story. But I give them, he does the wordsmithing on the script, but then in the script, I say, okay, move to point 2, move to point 3. Here's where this is emotion. And so now you would go there and stand there and tell that story. And one of our other clients, Jody, when she was rehearsing it, she would literally take each section and print it out and put it up in the wall in front of her, in front of the different sections. So the first few times you're like, and then you stand here. Oh, okay. And so if you do that repetitively, it becomes part of your body. And this woman from Australia, she was scared to death. And she said, but when I stood in the spot, I knew what to say. And when I moved to the next spot, I knew what to say. It was so powerful to be able to give that gift to her. But if we didn't suggest that, she would have freaked out. She would have been in her head too much, and she wouldn't have been present. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my first
Yeah.
thought.
And one more thought for you. I know you want to get all the processes right. You said it's an engineering thing. I totally get that. But I always tell the audience, your audience wants to hear you, but they also want to get to know you. So you bring your personality, you bring the fun part of yourself to every presentation and approach it in a conversational manner. And our mentor, Fripp, taught us this: be conversational. It won't be a conversation per se, but be conversational. And it will almost relax you more because the audience, if they're there, chances are they want to hear you or they wouldn't have showed up. So we're going to get the idea. I know we can initially get our process in mind, but with that technique, our body absorbs it, and we then free. And Darren says, good structure will free you. It doesn't freeze you, it frees you. Personality, knowledge, information. And for me, the third piece is the mindset that says, I can't wait to give this gift to my audience. I'm gonna love them so much. I can't wait. So it's more, I'm in an enjoyment mode. I get this. So I'm less caught up in the details and the minutia and crossing the T's and dotting the I's. I hope that makes sense.
Less here, more there.
It's about them. It's about them.
Thank you.
No.
Yeah.
Can you talk, and again, maybe we can rapid fire this one. I really like on this topic of making it about the audience. I like those 4 questions that you shared with us last night on stage, Brian, how to overcome that. Because a lot of our listeners are not, in fact, not even Toastmasters. They're just people.
Join Toastmasters. It's the greatest place to make mistakes.
Yep.
That's why I joined 4 clubs.
But you mentioned those 4 questions that you ask yourself to put yourself in the mindset overcoming that stage. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. It's 5 minutes before. Craig Valentine and I create a little phrase that says, skill set without mindset will leave your audience upset. Skill set without mindset will leave your audience upset. And that's kind of where you're talking about your stuff. But if you're up here, your mindset is not in the right place. So the 4 questions I suggest people ask themselves just before they go on stage or 5 minutes before, steal off to the bathroom or backstage. Number 1 is, what is my intent? Get clear on what is your intent. Because otherwise the monkey mind starts going, what will they think of me? Oh my gosh, are they going to like me? Do I have broccoli in my teeth? Is my fly open? That's normal. Congratulations, you're human. So we've got to get it back to audience focus. So number 1, what is my intent? Number 2, am I present? Am I right here, right now with these people? Number 3, will I have fun? If you want it to be fun, it starts with you. If you're freaking out, they're going to freak out. If you're having fun, no matter what happens, people in the background, let's have fun with it. Okay. And now the audience is okay with that. I hope you're okay with that. And then the 4th question from one of our mentors and friends is Willie Jolly. He said, ask yourself, how would I give this presentation if I knew it was my last one ever? Boom. And that grounds you, that gets you in the right intention. And that's fixing your mindset. Again, you don't have to be perfect. The audience doesn't want you perfect. The audience wants you present.
Beautiful. Okay. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I am very grateful for your time. My question is there something that you wish more podcast interviewers would ask you?
That's a question I've never really considered. A question you wish more podcast interviewers would ask us.
So I will jump in. So you
Please
can
do.
think.
Thank you. I'll think it through while you do that.
So what I believe are the 2 biggest mistakes is speakers and presenters, even professional speakers. We're going to mention this on Sunday, is 2 biggest mistakes in the speaking world. Number 1, self-doubt. Self-doubt. Imposter syndrome. You don't believe you have stories. You don't know that your stories have value. If you're alive, you have stories. You may not know how to find them, but you have stories and their value. If you tell them right, they have value. And number 2 is ego. Ego. While we're here, we might mention that because when I was working with Mark Brown, when I first started working with him, the very first night, I thought I was better than I was. I thought, you heard me tell a story last night. Oh, Dad, and we have some work to do. But my ego was in the way and I wasn't coachable. I needed the humbling, if you will, to let go of that ego. Because ego, people start thanking you and You're the best in the club. You're the best speaker. Yeah, you still suck, but you're the best speaker tonight. Look, it's good to have encouragement, but when it grows into ego, now we think we're great and we stop learning and we slide backwards. Once you stop learning, there's no progress and you don't even stay there. You start sliding backwards in your skills. And your audience can tell. That's why I go back to the skill set mindset. Your audience can tell if you're ego driven or if you're audience focused. One of the things that we teach is having you focused questions, using the word you or your. If you go back and watch my video of my championship speech in 8 minutes, I said you or your 34 times. That's an average of 4 times every minute. But I learned from my wordsmith coach, when I say you or your, the listener like hears it, like they hear it. It's personalized. Oh, he's talking to me. And so as a result, that helped my connection to the audience, which is part of why I won. But 34 times, that's a lot of times to say you or your. And nobody ever said, you said you too much. That's never happened.
Quick fire answer. Ask not just us, but ask other guests your mistakes and failures and lessons learned from them. No matter how successful, ask about mistakes and failures and lessons learned from them.
Beautiful. And that one's even with speeches. If you want a good speech,
In anything at all.
yeah, I love that. You have any last comments, questions?
And you can even ask who were their mentors. Because even successful people have mentors. They might not have time to talk about them. And I had several. Mark, obviously, one of the key ones in my speaking. But if it wasn't for my first mentor, Vinny, who taught me stage time, I would have never gotten to Toastmasters. I would have never gotten to meet my other mentors along the way. So he was critical, even though I'm still not connected to him now. But back then, that's what I needed. To me, it was like God saying, okay, you need this person now. Now let's go to him. Now let's bring Mark Brown in.
Beautiful. Okay.
Thank you all.
Yeah. I appreciate your time, appreciate your wisdom, and I'm hoping that people you guys up, look up Stage Time University, also Unforgettable Presentation Podcast. I'm subscribed. There's immense nuggets, even though lesson number 7 with step number 6, that was very fun. I appreciated that.
Yeah. He owned it. He owned
Yes,
the mistake.
absolutely.
So there you go.
And that's what I mean, too, just having fun with it. Yeah, it was messed up. It was confusing, but I acknowledged it.
We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progression.
There you go. Our
Well,
pleasure.
Check out markbrownspeaks.com, darrenlacroix.com, stagetimeuniversity.com, and reach out on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And thank you for your time. Thank you, gentlemen. And until next time, I encourage you to speak Arizona.